Welcome to the Minimalist Educator Podcast, where the focus is on a less is more approach to education. Join your hosts, Christine Arnold and Tammy Musiałowski, authors of The Minimalist Teacher and Your School Leadership Edit, a minimalist approach to rethinking your school ecosystem, each week as they explore practical ways to simplify your work, sharpen your focus, and amplify what matters most so you can teach and lead with greater clarity, purpose, and joy.
What if good enough really was good enough? In today's episode, we're giving perfectionism the side eye and exploring the power of the ish approach in education. Because sometimes done-ish, ready-ish, and perfect-ish are exactly what we and our students need to thrive. Welcome everybody to this week's episode of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Welcome, Tammy. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to this conversation, as always, but I like the connection that you thought of for this one, so I'm looking forward to it. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited as well to have a chat about this and see where our conversation takes us today. So I'm going to call this episode the Ish episode, Tammy. I'm naming it now. It's the Ish episode.
Yes, love it.
Tammy and I were chatting. We both, not in a coordinated approach in any way, shape, or form, but we both happened to recently read the book Math-ish by Jo Boaler, which is, we're not here to promote her work necessarily, but it just so happens that we've both been picking up and reading that book recently. And in it, she also makes reference to the picture book Ish by Peter H. Reynolds as well. And it got us thinking about how we can apply this sort of thinking to education and our work as teachers as well. So why don't I start with talking about the picture book?
Yeah.
And then maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the ish comes through with Jo Boaler's work. Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
So if you don't know the picture book Ish by Peter H. Reynolds, definitely pick it up and have a look. It's a lovely one. And without spoiling the plot too much, in it there's a character who likes to draw, but becomes concerned that the drawings aren't accurate or perfect enough and feels a bit put off by it until another character says it's not quite right. It's not quite a vase, but it's vase-ish. And this inspires the main character to feel more comfortable and confident about not having a perfect drawing, but having an ish drawing, which is a really lovely thought.
It really is. It's such a great book. I've read it at the start of school years as a way to just, kind of embrace a growth mindset with students to say it's okay that we might make a mistake or, we aren't good at something yet, but we'll get there because we're just starting this year together. We're just, bringing what we have and growing from there. And so it was kind of fun to see this new book by Jo Boaler, who we've both read, other books by her in the past, and we know her philosophy and research around teaching math. And so this book, Math-ish, is really about how math is just much more than calculating and being right or wrong. And math being just like this narrow set of ideas. It's much more about making sense of problems. It's about thinking through situations and having different strategies to use to solve problems, and knowing that there's multiple ways to look at something, because what we're doing when we're solving mathematical type problems is we are looking for connections and we're looking for patterns. And those are things that our brains are wired to do anyway. Our brain is wired to look for patterns in something. And so if we think about math in this more open way, it becomes a space that's creative for people versus black and white. So it's not just to solve or compute something. It's about making sense of problems, thinking about them creatively, looking at different visual representations of what math can look like for people, because our brains, yes, they do certain things similarly, but many people have different visualizations of how something can look or how a pattern grows. And so when we think about math in that way, it's much more open and invites everybody into that, because everybody can say something or show something about their understanding of math. So it aligns with Peter Reynolds' book, because it really is about having an open mind about math, right? In the other book, it's about art. But it doesn't matter. We're looking about ish in the bigger picture of things, like you said. So how can we apply this broader way of thinking into what we do in education in a really complex space, where a lot of times we are looking for excellence. We're looking for, we don't say perfection, but sometimes that word excellence means the same thing to people. So how do we have this ish mindset versus like we have to always achieve to the highest standard? Because maybe that standard is just really hard for people. And how do we kind of still get people achieving expectations, but it's not going to look the same for everyone?
There's a part of the book, Math-ish, where she discusses how important estimation is and how we need to do that. But she gives this specific example of how she's seen examples over and over again of students who are using the procedure or using an algorithm, getting a completely wrong answer, but because they haven't estimated or thought about it, they've just applied a standard procedure, they can't see how wrong their answer is. They lose sight of what a reasonable answer would be.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really good analogy for a lot of what we do in teaching. You know, like if you're so caught up in like, okay, I'm following the rules. I'm following the rules. I'm doing what I've been asked to do. You could very easily go down a path of losing track of what is reasonable and what is, and what good can look like when we're just stuck in this idea of like, I've got to follow the content, I've got to do coverage, I've got to follow all of these rules and expectations and what's being asked of me. You can lose track of what is reasonable. And I think, when we're talking about minimalism in education, I think this idea of bringing back the ish could be a really powerful notion to ground us back in again, of letting go of certain things that aren't serving us and getting back to what is reasonable, as she says.
Yeah. I think that's such a great word, reasonable, right? Because that's one of the math practice standards, like applying reasoning to problem solving. And I think you're right. We do get off track so easily with so many things, right? It could be student behaviors. It could be new initiative. It could be a technology thing coming in. It could be cell phone use. It could be so many things. And so how do we think of something as, okay, this is kind of the direction we want to go? It almost makes me feel like a simpler way of thinking, right? Because we're not striving for perfection. We're not saying you have to do all these things and make sure your checklist is all checked off, but we're going in that direction. So as long as you're going in this direction, then you're on the right track. So which I think could make people feel like, what are you even talking about? That feels very nebulous, like very like what does that even mean? But if you bring it to like your classroom teaching experience, right? And if you have planned a lesson or something, I don't even like calling them lessons, but like you have some kind of experience planned for your students.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, that didn't quite go the way I anticipated. But instead of thinking of that as a complete failure because it didn't work out as planned, what are the ish pieces of that? So what pieces of the thing that did not go as expected did go as expected? And so pick out some of those pieces like, oh yeah, you know what? The kids actually did follow all the instructions. They got all their materials. They followed the protocol. What was the thing that broke down? And so this could be a way of helping us analyze things that aren't working or don't work for whatever reason. So yeah, it was ishy,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of there, but what's the thing that threw it off? And so I think if we then take that bigger picture, right? So this is the culture we're trying to build in the school. And it kind of feels like that we're we're ish getting there. What's the thing that's not feeling like we're quite there? So it could be a way to just think about those bigger picture things and evaluate them or analyze them.
For sure. And for individuals who feel like if it's not this perfect image that is in the book or in my head, then it's a complete failure.
Yeah.
We can move away from that because if we look at it with that ish viewpoint of it's not quite there, but there was some good stuff in it. We're getting there. What can we learn from it? I think that can be a good place to move from away from this idea of like it's all or nothing. If it's not perfect,
yeah,
it's not good enough. I think that could be really helpful because I know I think there's a lot of teachers out there who do like to have a very clear vision and really want to control what's going on and what, maybe not necessarily what the product is, but it could definitely be the product, but it might also be the path that you take to get there. And they really have a clear vision and it's got to be that or it's a failure. And I think this ish thinking can help us sort of filter out the good and the bad and help us analyze because we all know, theoretically, we all know that we learn so much from making mistakes that that's a huge opportunity for growth and development is making mistakes. But I don't necessarily think we all live and die by that knowledge. I think it's
right.
That's fine for somebody else to fail and make mistakes. It's not okay for me to fail and make mistakes. So I think it could be a useful reminder for a lot of people.
I think so. And I do think that, we know that perfectionist tendencies come from somewhere, right? But it is very prevalent in the teaching world, right? Like you see it often physically in the physical environment, the way teachers set up their spaces. You see it in just making sure that every student gets what they need, which is great because that's what we're going for. But sometimes it's in the planning process and we can go overboard too, right? And that gets exhausting. So a lot of times in planning, I remember, when we would plan in Singapore, you kind of plan, half of your time. And then because that something is going to bleed over into the next day, right? So like if your plan, we all know that over planning is good because then you're prepared for whatever. But there does have to be some buffer in there that we've talked about buffer time before, where you do have the wiggle room. And so like I'm thinking of like planning as ish time, right? Where you're like, here are my ideas for how we're going to achieve this. It might look like this, it might look like this, might look like this. And however it turns out is going to be fine because it's a learning experience for me as the teacher in planning this way and for the students. So I mean, we've been in the classrooms for a long time, so it's sometimes a little bit easier. Like that might feel like winging it to some people, but it's really not. It's like you do have a plan, right? You have a plan, but you're like, this might not work in this moment depends on how the kids are coming in. It depends on different factors, who's there, who's not there. And so you might have to shift. So I feel like some of our planning pieces might feel kind of ishy because we're like, okay, we have the ideas, but I'm not going to get super meticulous about certain things because I might have to flex. I might need to change. And I don't want to have wasted my time getting all this stuff prepared or whatever if it's not going to work. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to plan and prepare what I need, obviously, but we can go overboard, like I said, with like over planning too much and getting in too much into the weeds and details about having exactly everything and expecting it to go that way as well. So,
yeah. And I think we've talked before about planning bell to bell.
Yeah.
And how, you're setting yourself up
for failure.
And if not failure, frustration, because
more than anything,
something's gonna mess you up if you've planned every minute of the day of the week. You're not allowing for anything coming sideways at you or responding to the kids that are in front of you. You're not allowing for any of that. So it that mindset, while it might feel like I'm prepared, I'm ready, I've got this, is actually leading us down that path of control, and it has to be exactly what I'm thinking. Because I can't really imagine someone planning in that level, but also being okay with it going off the rails. Do you know what I mean? Those two things don't sort of go together. I can't imagine someone who's put all of that time in planning bell to bell for the whole week is also then like, but it didn't work out. Like that, those two don't really go together, do they?
No, unless you're doing it for compliance, which I've had to do.
Yeah,
right.
True.
Which is, we know, like a big colossal waste of time most of the time. But like, anyway, that's another story.
That is another story.
Yes. Yeah. So I think what stands out for me a lot with an ish way of thinking is that it's having a step back from being in all the details, right? So it's easy to get really sucked into all your everyday things and not have a moment to like step back and evaluate what's happened. So there might be, one of those practices as a good teacher is you do need a bit of time to just sit and think through what's been going well, what didn't work. And so this might be a way that you can frame your thinking, right? So you can think, was this ish? Was I on the right track? When am I going to have my ish time? Something like that, right? Just to, as a kind of way to reflect almost. Am I in the arena or am I way out in left field with things? And so I do just like the kind of openness of this, which again can feel scary for educators who need more of the control, right? Because this is definitely a mindset thing. And so, like I was telling you earlier about, we need to provide opportunities for our students to think critically, reason with each other, connect. But if a teacher isn't going to learn in that way and experience some of the experiences they're going to bring to their students, it doesn't have the same impact because they just want to learn by a textbook, say. And so I'm trying to think of a good analogy here. It's almost like some kind of barrier. Is like a wall or something where it's like, I'm going to teach my kids in this way, but I'm not going to learn in this way.
Right.
Because this is how I have always learned in the past. And I don't need to experience that, but I'll do that for my students. And so that can take away some of that ish, I think, because you're becoming more rigid in, I mean, obviously, you know how you think you learn best, but also if you're going to be teaching other people, that's different, right? So it's one thing to like take a course on something, and it's another to take a workshop on teaching strategies and not participate in the strategies. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. It would be a teacher giving feedback and an opportunity for students to redo or resubmit based on feedback, but then expecting their first attempt to be the final attempt.
Yeah.
It would be, yeah, I'm trying to teach you that you can learn and grow and iterate and improve. But for expectations for myself, it needs to be done right the first time. Yeah. And so that ish really frees people up, I think, to let go a little bit and apply the same ideas to themselves. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. I can grow and learn from mistakes just like my students can. So hopefully that's the message we're getting across to everybody today.
Yes.
That we're not just saying do a half-hearted job at everything. No.
Right. No, not at all. Not at all. Because this does require a lot of thought. You know, there is a lot of critical thinking involved in getting to like transport. This is a transformation of your mindset. And it's not an easy process. So like, I'm definitely still fixed in some things just with everyday life, but I tried, you know, I always am like, okay, I try to be open, but also I'm just going to do this. So
it's something that we can all learn a little bit there, I think.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. For sure.
Do we have any pare down pointers on this idea of ish, Tammy?
Well, I think that just give it a try, right? Like, even just read the Peter Reynolds book.
Yeah.
If you haven't read it, and get a sense of what we're talking about, this idea through that story.
I think so. I was thinking as well, something that I've talked about repeatedly on the podcast is, you know, having your 3 priorities for the day. I wonder if you could ish that habit. And so instead of like, I'm going to have 3 perfect, complete to-dos done by the end of the day, what would the ish version of that look like? What is something that I'd be comfortable finishing in my day without it having to be just right the first time?
I think I live in that realm. I think that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Yeah. And it feels okay because I know that, you know, I know how I operate with deadlines, and I know how I can be flexible with things and still get things accomplished. So that's very doable. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally know what you mean. I think I think I need to work on the ish approach when I am sharing something with others the first time. I think I try and edit and revise a little bit too much. And maybe I need to have that ish approach of like, why don't I share
Here's
what I
a draft.
have? Yeah, here's a draft.
Yeah.
Let me share what I have, get some feedback, and make it even better than what I could have
Yes.
edited and revised myself.
Yes. Yep. Relatable for sure. I think we've lived in that together as well.
Yes, we have.
Well, I liked this conversation. I like you said, I hope our listeners have gotten what we hoped to share, even though it does feel like kind of it doesn't feel concrete in a way, because we are talking about fuzzy borders, or fuzzy lines almost. But I mean, it's something to think about for sure.
It is definitely a mindset thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Christine.
No, thank you.
Again.
And hope everyone has a go at an ish approach to their work. This episode is sponsored by Plan Z Education Services, supporting educators with forward-thinking professional learning that puts both student impact and teacher wellness at the centre. Driven by a vision to teach less, impact more, they help educators find purpose, prioritise what matters, and simplify their practice. Learn more at planzeducation.com.
Thank you for listening to the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Join Christine and Tammy and guests again next time for more conversations about how to simplify and clarify the responsibilities and tasks in your role. If today's episode helped you rethink, reimagine, reduce, or realign something in your practice, share it in a comment or with a colleague. For resources and updates, visit planzeducation.com and subscribe to receive weekly emails. Until next time, keep it simple and stay intentional.